welcome to our first Get Shit Done webinar. Thanks for having your videos on. It'd be good to have an engaging session with you all. If you've got any questions at any point throughout, please just stick your hand up or drop something in the chat, and we can pick things up as we go. So I think I know most of you, but for those I don't, my name is David Worldon. I'm the founder of Accelerated Innovation, which is a boutique management consultancy that helps complex organizations transform ideas into outcomes. I also host a podcast called Innovation Insider and have recently published my first book, Get Shit Done, which you can see behind me, which I think all of you probably have a copy of. In the past 18 months, we've saved leaders over $1 million in consulting fees across a number of industries and organisations. And we have an NPS score of +90, which is circa 3 or 4 times all major consultancies. So we have some very happy clients, some of whom are on this call today. Like I said, I've recently published the Get Shit Done book. And at the moment, I'm very excited that we are sort of midway through the development of our 3rd insurance industry innovation report that is due to be published in mid-October, focused on how Australia's major private health insurers are innovating in response to system challenges such as chronic disease, ageing population, and all sorts of economies of scale, supplier and buyer power, etc. And our purpose is really around unlocking growth inside complex organisations. We're on a mission to save leaders $40 million in consulting fees and over 20 years waiting to get shit done. Quick rundown of what we're going to go through today. First, going to play back some common innovation challenges, and this is largely from data that we've collected across a number of leaders across industries on some of the barriers that people feel are holding their organisations back from really progress. Then we're going to introduce this concept of innovation compass, which is really around 7 pillars that we believe can really drive successful innovation within a corporate context. I'm going to talk through each of those and talk about some of the challenges that they address, some potential ways to some sort of quick wins. I want to give you some tangible walkaways with things that you can sort of walk away with today, tomorrow, and implement that can help you kind of move from where you are to where you want to be. Then we're going to talk about the AI overlay. So we won't go deep into this, but we will talk a little bit about how I believe AI can work within that kind of framework of the innovation compass, and where AI stands as not necessarily the savior of everything innovation, but something that some fundamentals you need to get right before you think about AI application. We're then going to have an activity, so it'll be interactive, where you'll have the chance to find out your innovation compass, and that can be done either at an organizational level or as a team level, whatever context is most beneficial for you. So you'll get a sense of where your strengths and gaps are from an innovation capability perspective. Then we're going to talk about the future of your organization. So as part of registering for this event, you shared a little bit about some projects that you'd be keen to get moving. We've sort of anonymized and synthesized those into hopefully finding something. We've got 4 examples. Hopefully you can find something relatable in that is relevant for you. And we sort of play out 2 scenarios based on if you act now, what the impact of that might be in the future, whereas if you don't act now, what the impact of that might look like in 10 years' time. Then we've got an exclusive offer that I can give you more details on a little bit later as participants who've attended the workshop today. And then we sort of follow up with some practical next steps, some frameworks, some downloads and assets that you can sort of walk away with that give you that ability to sort of get from where you are now and get moving and get shit done either today, this afternoon, or tomorrow and into the future. So we'll kick off with some of the sort of 6 innovation challenges that are facing modern leaders. And this is largely from when we released our Get Shit Done book. We asked all leaders, what is one thing that you believe is most frustrating about progressing innovation within your organization? And we've sort of synthesized and themed that into 6 key themes. So Number one is that everyone's busy, but nothing's moving. And this is by far and wide the most common challenge that comes up, is that teams are overwhelmed with activity. Everyone's busy, everyone's days are full, everyone's weeks are full, everyone's years are full. But day to day, week to week, month to month, and sometimes year to year, we're not necessarily seeing meaningful progress on innovation initiatives. Second is that strategy and innovation aren't talking to each other. So those of us who've worked in strategy, those of us who've worked in innovation or in similar roles or across both, see that there's not often necessarily a common thread or a steel thread. Sometimes innovation feels like it's done for innovation's sake. Sometimes we get innovation theatre. Sometimes strategy is done in a silo. Sometimes it's done in isolation. It's done once a year, once every 5 years, whatever it may be. And then there's not necessarily a common thread between strategy and innovation. Next is everyone's talking about AI, but no one really knows what to do next. We've even seen recently with a lot of companies releasing their results and boasting about how many AI applications they have in production at the moment. Yes, that's interesting, that's kind of useful, but unless they really have meaningful application, what we want to talk about is, I'd love to open up the discussion on this as we get to it, but rather than kind of what are some theoretical things that we're hearing talked about around the future of work and what this means, but some really practical examples on some you can do in a different way, hopefully a different way to look at AI and how it might be able to solve some of the problems or address some of the challenges in your organizations. Number four is that the culture still rewards playing it safe. So we often work in environments, a lot of people on the call work in financial services in particular. In an Australian context, we still have a hangover from the GFC from sort of 5 or 6 years ago. That risk culture certainly permeates through our organisations. And if you're an insurance organisation in particular, risk is exactly the business that you're in. So quite often we feel like the culture or the organisation that we're in rewards playing it safe rather than sort of taking calculated risks to really shift the needle and kind of move your industry forward or your organisation forward. Next one is that the system is designed to stall progress. So this is, I guess, from the perspective of leaders, is it doesn't sometimes, although the system is not designed to stall progress, no organisation necessarily wants to shut things down. It's that from a leader's perspective, it does feel like the system is working against us. So it feels like we're constantly trying to push proverbial shit uphill, or we're trying to paddle up the creek, move up the creek without a paddle. Because the environments aren't necessarily conducive to taking that risk. And then the last one is that there just aren't enough people, and it largely links with that first run around everyone being busy but nothing's moving. So we don't necessarily always feel like we've got the capacity or the capability to do the things that we want to do. I'm going to dive into that a little bit around sometimes it's not necessarily about the amount of people, it's about the right people. Or it's about having the right teams and the right combinations of people that can actually help and enable progress and the systems that surround that to be able to get things moving. So they're not just opinions, they do show up in the data as well, which I'm going to give you kind of 3 headline insights now, sort of, I guess, shocked me, frustrated me, but also are probably not all that surprising around what leaders are feeling. So from our internal research, only 3 in 10 organisations have had a visible innovation win in the past 90 days. So this is from people who have completed a innovation scorecard, innovation capability scorecard that we host on our website. From dozens of responses, we've found that only 30% of people of organisations have had a notable visible innovation win in the last 90 days. So we're not feeling like we have much progress and things aren't really moving forward. 9 in 10 leaders don't feel safe sharing half-baked ideas. So this is interesting because quite often you might see senior leaders, CEOs sharing ideas, sharing half-baked ideas, and happily surfacing those. But sometimes it gets stuck in that the environments that people operate in under that don't necessarily feel like it is safe to share those ideas because, one, there's either too many ideas, it might be an idea that's similar to something that's failed before, or it's not an environment that rewards guess that psychological safety where you feel like you can speak up and talk about something that may not necessarily have the proof, may not necessarily have a business case yet, but it is just an idea that has kind of designed to stimulate thinking or conversation or debate or whatever that may be. And then the last one is that only 1 in 10 leaders say that, 1 in 10 leaders actively encourage curiosity and experimentation. So again, the environments aren't necessarily always conducive. Culture is broken, systems are broken. There's all sorts of things within complex organizations that are working against curiosity, experimentation, creativity, all of these things that kind of enable innovation and progress and moving things forward. Now, I'm going to say the word shit a lot in this, so I'm just, excuse language. I assume that you were all expecting that, but I'm also going to try and replace it with other words like progress, and just so you don't sort of tire of the same words. Okay, so I'm going to introduce to you a new concept called Innovation Compass. So this is a platform or a framework that we've developed in-house off the back of our book, and it's designed as a practical framework to help leaders and organizations navigate the messy reality of innovation. So some of these things that we've talked about. So just like a compass, it's designed to provide progress and direction when paths are uncertain. So when you're working through complexity and uncertainty. And it's anchored by 6 essential pillars and 1 reinforcing pillar that I'll talk to. And it's sort of largely a difference between, I guess, a nuance between sort of design and application. To ensure progress, alignment, and impact in complex organizations. So that's going to be the foundation of our conversation today. And you'll start seeing a lot more of this Innovation Compass come through in some of our materials post the workshop as well. So the first pillar is culture first. So what we know is that innovation succeeds when people feel safe to ask better questions, challenge defaults, and experiment without fear. Pretty much the opposite of that statistic I just shared, where 1 in 10 people feel safe to share a half-baked idea. Second is organizational fit. And sorry, COMPASS is an acronym. So you'll see here, C, O, et cetera, et cetera. Organizational fit. So tailoring your approach to the system you're in, to its politics, maturity, and power structures is critically important. Lifting and shifting innovation capability or innovation processes, structures, etc., does not work. Believe me, I've tried it. I've failed, as I've had a number of leaders who've taken what they think is a perfect operating environment conducive for innovation, tried to apply that to the next role in another organization or their other team, and found that it's fallen flat or it just hasn't quite worked. So you've got to design for the system that you're in. And make sure that you are set up within the right constraints in that business that's fit for purpose. The next one is momentum. So starting small, delivering visible wins, and building belief through progress before scale. So we see it too often, time and time again, that we just want scale. This is from the top down, generally, is that we're in a hurry. But on the other end of it, sometimes we're over-engineering it. Sometimes we're building something that's too big to start. We're not testing and learning. We're not experimenting. We're actually just building that big thing that the leader said was a really good thing to do. As a result, it takes time. We lose momentum. Sometimes the structures around us aren't necessarily set up to give us the momentum that we need. That becomes frustrating. Teams get shut down. Initiatives get shut down. People get fired. Move on to the next role. As some of us have been through, some of us have, I'm sure all of us have got people who we know in our networks who have been through this as well. Pretty much every team that I've ever worked in on client side doesn't exist anymore. They've all been made redundant in the last few years. People, the right people who are credible, trusted, ambidextrous, so can work with both hands, and largely that ambidextrous is around a mentor of mine, Ron Arnold, who many of you may know, talks about this a lot around ambidexterity is really about the ability to, I guess, not only get your hands dirty, but also kind of operate in strategy, operate in execution at the same time. And the ability to do both is a unique skill, but also have a bit of mongrel about you, the ability to get your hands dirty, get in there and just get shit done. These are the things that make a difference at all levels of people who are trying to kind of break the innovation cycle. Architecture. So innovation does need scaffolding. You need structure, you need funding, you need governance, you need clarity, and you need a rhythm to protect it and make sure that you can actually innovate effectively, time and time again, having those repeatable processes that are fit for the system that you're in, and having the design and the stop starts and the processes is critically important, and recognizing that that's not necessarily going to be. I had a great conversation with a leader yesterday who said we need to make sure that every partner we bring on is not treated like Microsoft, because not every organization that we bring on has the same level of risk, needs the same level of scrutiny. Is the kind of the downside is not going to be anywhere near as material, or the impact of bringing on a partner or building something new or investing in X is going to be the same. So it's about having the right scaffolding that's fit for purpose for the innovation that you're trying to initiate. Strategy. So innovation must cascade from the boardroom ambition to frontline action. There's got to be a steel thread that really goes through the whole of the organization, and that needs to be a two-way thread. It can't be a one-way street where strategy is set once a year or once every 3 years, and then it's just go and do it, and then we reset a new strategy in 3 years' time. Innovation needs to feed strategy, and we need to make sure that everything that we're doing from an innovation context also has a direct link into the strategic ambitions of the organization, the division, the team, whatever it may be. Again, have worked in numerous teams where you don't make that direct link to strategy, and suddenly you find yourself lost looking at all sorts of initiatives that the business is not interested in at all. So you wasted time, money, people, and again, people end up losing their jobs, and it's just wasted funding for the owners of the businesses and the shareholders and all stakeholders involved. And the last one here is scaffolding. So this is the kind of reinforcing that largely is linked to architecture. But if you think about the role of architects when they're building a home or a shopping center or whatever it is, the role of architects is around that kind of design capability. Scaffolding is around the application of that, is really making sure that you've got the right actual structures in place and they are stable. So having discipline, having clarity and structure, these are the invisible supports or the scaffolding that do protect innovation from being crushed by BAU processes, which is what we see again, time and time again. Largely linked to capacity constraints is BAU and innovation capabilities or innovation initiatives are often competing for the same people through the same processes, through the same teams, etc. And it just doesn't get prioritized as a result. Okay, so we're going to dive into each of those compass points and talk a little bit about we've got a repeatable structure here. So we're going to talk about what the initiative is, or what the part of the compass is. We're going to talk about how it links to some of the challenges that have been shared by leaders. Got some quick wins or some tips or some advice for hopefully if you're to walk away. And again, I've been really deliberate to try and give sort of tactical advice, that things that you can sort of walk away with today and have an impact. They're not going to shift the needle overnight, but they're going to get you pointing in the right direction, just like a compass would. And then I've got some examples that I can share of where I've actually worked with some of you on the line across some of these initiatives where we've actually seen success in this particular element of the compass to kind of help drive change and drive progress and get things moving in organizations. So from a culture perspective, we know that innovation succeeds when people feel safe to ask better questions, challenge defaults, and experiment without fear. But on the problem side, we see that culture still shuts ideas down. So what I've deemed as a psychological safety crisis, in that only 1 in 10 leaders feel safe sharing half-baked ideas in their organisation. We've got blame culture persisting through a number of organisations, with only 20% or 2 in 10 leaders saying that failure is always treated as learning. The rest see it as blame. So 80% of the time, if something fails, organisations look for someone to blame rather than treat it as a learning. So that you can see how that doesn't necessarily invite a conducive environment or a conducive culture that rewards experimentation, curiosity, creativity, all of those things. And the other thing is that progress often goes unnoticed, with 90% of leaders saying that progress is celebrated only sometimes. So there's a fine line between innovation and real innovation and innovation theatre, and I'm well aware of that. But what we're seeing is more and more often that innovation wins, some of the small wins aren't being shared enough, and that becomes our own worst enemy. If we're not sharing progress, if we're not showing that we are what we are doing is we're having an impact, we're making progress, where we've got to celebrate those wins. If we're not doing that and we're not celebrating that with a wider audience, then they just assume that we're slow and we're not getting any momentum. And again, I've been through this time and time again. I've gone through oversharing times, I've gone through undersharing times, and have seen the impact that it can have on the wider culture and how you're perceived when you're trying to move things and get things done in an organization. So I've got 3 bits of advice here to make curiosity visible. The first, and these are just sort of tactical initiatives, is learning rounds. Kick off an opportunity to kick off your team meetings with what have we learned? What have we learned this week? What have we learned this fortnight? What have we learned in the last 24 hours? And ask for 1 insight per person, not just project updates. Let's get away from just the dry updates. It's like, what have we learned? Let's move to that safe environment where people feel safe going, hey, what I learned from this. And it suddenly becomes around, it's okay to fail. It's okay to hide. It's not okay to hide what we've learned if it's come from a less than desirable outcome from what we didn't expect. So this normalizes learning and curiosity. Failure Share Friday. Run a Failure Share Friday. Invite 1 short story of something that didn't work and what was learned. So you can model it yourself as a leader. Again, just being vulnerable and making sure people feel completely safe, creating an environment where there's no consequence or negative consequence on them sharing failures, because failures happen to us all the time, every day. Doesn't have to be material, but again, it's about creating that environment where people feel psychologically safe to share failure and celebrate it as a learning more so than be punished for it. And again, largely a language one is, let's talk about testing rather than proving. Quite often we will hear this culture of around, we've got a hypothesis, okay, let's prove it. Let's prove it. And let's write a business case and let's spend lots of time with lots of people putting really big slide decks together. Let's reframe that to testing it. Okay, I love that hypothesis. Let's test it. How do we test that? We believe that is a really, really great way to introduce a hypothesis. And then it's very easy to experiment and design experiments, really low-fi experiments on how you can test that. So move away from the large businesses case to testing over proving. A really useful framework here, and I've actually got a framework here for each of these compass points that is hopefully useful for you to, you'll have access to them at the end to be able to download all of them and use them in your day-to-day operations. An activity prioritization matrix, which essentially is an opportunity for, it's a sort of 2x2 matrix with a couple of different overlays based on size and color, where you can look at any idea, any initiative, whatever it may be, any feature through sort of 4 lenses. So 1 is desirability, 2 is viability, 3 is feasibility, and 4 is linked to strategy and purpose. And you can easily kind of sort of, even if it's finger in the air sort of stuff, assess ideas, and it adds some level of objectivity to help you prioritize initiatives. So say you've got everyone in this room came together with an idea to solve a particular problem. You give everyone the space to be able to sort of share their idea. You can use this matrix. You can use it in a far more considered way as well. I've done that with a lot of organizations, but it's a sort of quick way to sort of, I guess, litmus test ideas or understand where the hypotheses are or the learning gaps are where you need to, where you do need to test. So if you don't know anything about the feasibility for it, that's something that you might design an experiment for to see if you can then assess it effectively. Okay, so just an example of a piece of work that I've done in the past that sort of has helped move the culture in the right direction for a team. So this is a number of years ago for a large insurer. I was leading a customer communications team. And what I found is through my one-on-ones with my staff, it was a team of 12 people. We had a hugely respected, a hugely experienced team. We had over 350 years of experience, combined experience across the team. So very much a legacy team. A lot of people had been there over 25 years at the organization, pretty much doing the same role. But we were very much a responsive, a reactive team. We weren't necessarily proactive. We weren't necessarily innovative or forward thinking. We were a service-based team. So we kind of just relied on people coming to us to get things done. But what I found is that through my one-on-ones with my teammates and team members is that there was all these kind of bugbears, all of these pain points that existed that we knew were impacting our productivity and our output and our throughput as a team. So I created this open forum. It was just a 1 hour team meeting where we were each given a sheet, a blank sheet, and basically we each had to write what is the biggest thing that's pissing us off at the moment, right? What is one thing that's really annoying me in my work day to day? And it can be as simple as I don't like getting CC'd on all these emails because it's a distraction for me, because it takes up time, it's context switching, it's something really simple. Or it could be that I have trouble getting to work every day for whatever reason it is, because I've got to drop the kids at school or whatever it is. It can be anything. And the idea was to, I guess, surface those problems and create an environment where people feel safe sharing those problems. So everyone wrote down their problem on a sheet, and then we worked in a room together, and everyone passed everyone's sheet around to everyone else in the team, and everyone had the opportunity to contribute and share a thought around how they might help solve that problem, what they would do to help address the issue that the person is facing. Now, off the back of that, everyone in the room was given the opportunity to share some of those or to discuss those. The idea was just they could take it away, feel safe, use it for whatever reason they wanted. But as a result, they had essentially 11 new ideas or different ways to tackle a challenge that they're probably not getting to day to day, because it's just something that annoys them. It's something that just they treat as their BAU, as their MO, and it just becomes frustrating. So I guess off the back of that, look, the outcomes were that we did see some quick wins implemented from members across the team. We actually had some team-based initiatives as well that we worked on to get a productivity uplift. We received positive feedback, and we started running it quarterly. So we ran it as an experiment, very low risk, 1 hour of people's time. It became a quarterly initiative that we then used for people, and then kind of rolled out across other problem areas across the team as well. So as a result, we sort of uplifted the culture of curiosity, collaboration, and innovation as well. So we started the move from a reactive, responsive team to being a bit more forward-thinking, proactive, and innovative team. That's 350 years plus of experience. So you can't shift that overnight, but this was getting us directionally correct. Organizational fit. So tailoring your approach to the system you're in, its politics, maturity, and power structures is critical to successful innovation. The problems we're facing is that the system swallows good ideas. So only 20% of leaders understand how decisions really get made in their organizations, which is a bit of a sad reflection of hierarchical leadership that happens within a number of organizations. 60% of leaders say that innovation is rarely or never tailored to context. So we do have this element of lift and shift. We bring in a brilliant innovation leader from another organization. They try and sort of bring their experience in and what's worked from them, lift and shift. As a result, ends up pissing a lot of people off. We don't necessarily get the outcomes that we desire. And again, leads to teams being fired. And sorry, I always go down that rabbit hole because I'm slightly soured by a number of, like I said, pretty much every team that I used to work in doesn't exist anymore, and everyone's been made redundant. And number 3 is wishful thinking, is that 80% of leaders admit that efforts often rest on wishful thinking rather than actually trying to leaders understanding what the pain points of their people are. And how they can actually address that. So we go, oh, cool, you're going to deliver that in 12 weeks. Great. That's it. Okay. In a week's time, okay, we've got 7 weeks to go. How are we tracking? Cool. Great. We don't necessarily dive in to understand what are the barriers, what are the things in the way, are we actually on track here? Rather than just kind of finger in the air, wishful thinking, we just think it's going to get done. We assume it's going to get done. Someone's pulled out a number, and that's kind of what we then hold ourselves to account to. So to address this, we can map influence and not org charts, right? This is around organizational fit. So 3 quick tips here. Let's find out who actually makes the decision, because sometimes we find the signatories are not actually, well, more often than not, the signatories or the people who sign off on some of these decisions are really not the people who are involved in the decision making. They are purely signatories. So have a look and actually try and map some decisions that have been made recently and look at what the journey was to get to where you needed to get to, and try and find some efficiencies on where you might be able to streamline that, bypass, engage earlier, just sort of change it to get a little bit more speed and productivity to whatever your next initiative may be. A readiness pulse. So do a readiness pulse check. In your next LT meeting, ask 2 simple questions for any new concept. Do we have capacity, and is the market ready for it? Again, largely links to the prioritization matrix that I talked around before. But again, we have this culture of like, okay, more, without really going, do we have the capacity? Is it something that our consumers really want or our users really want? So some quick questions that will really, I guess, you can use with your direct teams, but also with your peers and your management to help, I guess, frame those conversations around making sure that we're adequately chasing the right, solving the right problems with the right solutions, but also we have the right people and the right capacity on board to be able to address those. And borrow a rule of 3. So if more than 3 approval steps are slowing a small test, escalate it for a streamlined path. If anything takes sort of more than 3 approvals, it's broken, especially when we're talking about innovation and experimentation. Generally, if we're not starting small, it's usually with enterprise solutions. Like I said, we need to treat that not every partner is going to be Microsoft. So we need to make sure that our systems are set up to actually enable that so that we can move at the pace that we need to be able to learn effectively. Really useful framework here is the stakeholder map, again, which I can share with you at the end, which looks at stakeholders across 2 lenses of interest and influence. So an X and Y chart, you essentially end up with 4 quadrants. Those with the highest interest and highest influence are your most important stakeholders. Those with low interest and low influence, you needn't worry about, or worry about a lot less. And then those with high interest and low influence, you would treat very differently to those with high influence and low interest. So as an example, you might have a legal team might be low interest, high influence. Whereas a high interest, low influence might be someone who's tried the initiative before and it failed, as an example. And the way that you treat those stakeholders is very different when you're pursuing any initiative. I will give an example of this that I led with a product called GreenPass. So I was working at NIB Health Funds at the time, and we had this initiative that sort of existed in the hallways of the organisation conceptually for about 5 years. It had been talked about publicly, it had been published in the media, even though it didn't actually exist. It was just in the CEO's head. So it was a very high profile initiative that had stalled for years within the organisation. But there was large expectations. We'd kind of struggled numerous times to get it off the ground. So I was handed the challenge, and I started with this, is literally just started with a stakeholder map and go, okay, this is what we're trying to do. Who are the people that we need in the business to kind of pull this hypothesis or design this proposition? And let's map them across one of these 4 quadrants. Those in the top right quadrant who had high interest and high influence were largely going to be people who were forming we'd need for the core team, and people who might manage services in the organisation that we might need. So we had a dependency on marketing, we had a dependency on digital, we had a dependency on other teams to be able to deliver capabilities, on technology, to be able to deliver capabilities for us to be able to design and build this proposition. So that top right quadrant straight away became our advisory board. Right, so we formed an advisory board of leaders of the teams that we needed to make sure that they are now part of the accountability. They are part of the solution. They are part of the design. And that became a really effective way to engage the right people. But then the CEO, whose idea it had been sitting in his head on what this proposition was, without any consumer testing, without any of that, he was really interested, but he actually had a really low level of interest of influence in the proposition. He did, I mean, because he was the CEO, but he had a high level of interest, low level of influence because he's not involved in the day-to-day of the organisation. So the way that we treated him was really different to legal, who we knew we'd need them at points X, Y, and Z. High level of influence, low level of interest, treated very differently. As a result, and this was, I guess, with a series of a good structured process and everything around this, but we were able to take this concept that had been sitting in the sort of corridors for 5 years from an idea into a product in market within 5 months. So completely designed and productized and in production. We then grew that to 15,000 users within a number of months. and grew that and was sort of set it up as something that was then able to scale, which is now scaled back into the business. So as a result, we had no stakeholder delays because we were holding our stakeholders accountable. They were part of our decision forums. We had regular decision forums with the advisory board. So they were involved in decision making, making sure that they could kick their teams up the arse if they needed to get them moving, where we had those dependencies on those teams who were out of our direct control or influence. And like I said, the governance was aligned to enable decision making momentum. So we had fortnightly stakeholder meetings early on. They moved to monthly a little bit later. And we also had a with or without you approach. So we had a very senior executive on our on our advisory board, and he wasn't always available to attend those decision forums. But we made it really clear early on that without those decision forums, if they're going to happen, whether you're there or not, as long as we have a number of people there, they are going to happen. And without them, it stalls all progress. And that was made really clear up front. As a result, it didn't matter that he wasn't there for some of those meetings. We were able to form the decision and inform that decision to relevant stakeholders after the point. And as a result, he ended up prioritizing the meetings and sort of pushing other things out of the way as a result, because he was so interested. Okay, momentum. I'm going to pause after this for questions as well. Starting small, delivering visible wins, and building a belief through progress before scale is critical for successful innovation. But the problem is that momentum is missing in a lot of organizations. So only 30% of leaders reported a recent innovation win, as I mentioned earlier on. 78% of leaders said early wins are only sometimes shared. So we're just not sharing those successes. And we have perfectionism paralysis. So 70% of leaders said that progress over perfection happens inconsistently. So we are constantly chasing perfection before progress and pragmatism, and that is ending up slowing us down. We're losing momentum because we're scope creeping. We're looking for a perfect solution because we feel like the whole house could fall down if we pursue this one thing or whatever it may be. But this element of perfectionism is killing progress. So to try and shift the needle, we need to celebrate progress and not perfection. We need to shift that needle around going, okay, rather than just celebrating every time we launch or we hit a milestone, let's celebrate progress. Let's celebrate what we've achieved and what we've actually done, the value that we've delivered, what we've built, what we've done that's kind of moved us from where we were to where we are now, even if it might feel minor. So number one is a quick win focus. So choose one quick win problem, identify a pain point you can solve within 30 days with minimal budget, and make it visible. So just do it. Just something that annoys you, something that annoys customers, something that annoys a stakeholder in your organization. Pull it out as a quick win and see what you can get done in 30 days. And hack it, whatever it may be, just get it done and celebrate it and share it and show it as progress. You won't necessarily have the wins. You may not have the outcomes, but this is about celebrating progress and showing that the art of possibility on what can be done. Scope stopwatch. So put a stopwatch on scope. In your next project scoping session, force an agreement on what can be delivered within 90 days. So rather than scope creep coming in, or rather than constant projects getting pushed out, set a hard line on 90 days and force an agreement on what can be delivered. And if that becomes your hard line, is delivering value in 90 days, you end up starting to find out what is really needs to be in scope and what doesn't. And if you hold to that, this is again what we did with GreenPass is we had a hard deadline to get into market because at the end of the day, we had executive bonuses that were on the line. We had to hit targets. So there was a big push to actually get what we needed and get in market. And to be fair, that was actually a really good outcome because it forced us to ask really hard questions around scope on what we really needed to do to deliver the value that we expected to deliver to consumers. And once we were in market, we were able to learn a lot quicker because we got real customer feedback and we knew exactly where the pain points were and what we needed to focus on. So our roadmap completely changed once we were in market because we had real customers, we had real insights and real learnings from in-market data. And show early work. Show progress, not perfectionism. So it's not necessarily about always hitting those big milestones. Demo a prototype, a draft, or a pilot within a couple of weeks, even if it's rough. Just use whiteboards, use things to kind of sketch and show that early work, and that will initiate debate, discussions, and help kind of get innovation cracking and creativity encouraged through the organisation. Useful framework here is a sprint plan, again, which is a framework that I will share with you after the session, which is really just about kind of showing what are the activities, what are the outcomes, what are the milestones, and what are the outputs that we're going to achieve in this sprint. You can put any time frame on those, and there's multiple sprints, so it's a framework that you can use and kind of apply from tomorrow after this session. I'm going to pause now if there's any questions or comments on anything that we've touched on so far. Cool. All right, we'll keep going. An example of this is the NRMA Certificate of Insurance redesign. So a couple of you ex-IAG alumni here, but we had a challenge, this is probably going back 10 years ago, where we had this ambition to update our certificate of insurance. So it's the most important document that we send to consumers that highlights what they are and aren't covered for when they take out any insurance product or make an amendment to any insurance product. So it's the contract that exists between the insurer and the insured. My team was in charge of designing and developing these documents to send to our consumers. So no margin of error at all. We get anything wrong on these, and we've seen actually IAG faced multi-million-dollar penalties for getting these wrong in the past. But we were broken. We had two siloed teams. We had a sort of a design team, which was my team, and we had an execution team, which was a technical team. So they were the ones with their hands on the tools. They were using HP Extreme to actually develop these communications and make sure they were personalized. And our team was there to make sure that it was what they were producing was correct, was within scope, was accurate, all of these kind of things. So it was a very linear process. So we would get a brief from someone in the business to amend a part of the document. In this particular case, it was a complete redesign. And if you can imagine, with several million customers throughout Australia across a number of product lines and a number of brands, that becomes an incredibly complex product quite quickly, right? Because you've got home, motor, and work. You've got, at the time, I think we had about 7 or 8 brands, multi-states, multi-legislation, multi-taxes, all sorts of complexity that was kind of, and within those product lines, you had all sorts of different lines. You had comprehensive, comprehensive plus, fire and theft, all these different levels of product. So really high risk. You get things wrong, the impact can be material, but we added this complexity by having 2 siloed teams. So a team that would brief one team, they would do the work, it would come back, they would review it over a period, they would give it back, they'd make the changes, you go back and forth. They were actually in different locations, using different technology, and it was a really slow process. So we're like, this is going to take years and years and years to initiate this actual redesign. And by the time we get through the redesign, it'll be out of date. Customers won't like it anymore anyway, because it'll be years before they, since they gave us the feedback on the things that they wanted to change. So we took it as an opportunity to break it in a couple of ways. So we broke the ambition into small achievable wins, what we called SAG, was small achievable goals. Someone in our team at the time she used SAG in her day-to-day. She said, even if you're really hungover and you want to get out of bed, you break your tasks into small achievable goals. And that might be, roll over, have a drink of water, get out of bed, go to the bathroom, whatever it is, brush your teeth. So we broke it into small achievable goals or small achievable wins. What are the things that we can do? So we broke it down and got to a level that we're really comfortable on the first piece of that large puzzle of the redesign that we're going to focus on. And that was one product line. It was one part of the customer journey based on, I think it was renew we touched on, because we send this document to consumers every time they renewed their policy once a year. It was one brand, and it was one micro product within that. We said, this is the right thing, and this is the right part of the document that we're going to focus on. So we broke it into kind of a micro roadmap, but that was really, really critical to success. We also broke the way that we operated as a team, as 2 teams. So we co-located the design and the development team and actually had them working next to each other. And we moved from this kind of linear, structured, I'll update the brief and send it to you and go back and back and back. They just worked together and actually worked over their shoulder and gave them the feedback in real time. And we worked in fortnightly sprints. So we set those real achievable outcomes on what are the things that we need to achieve. And that might be this part of the document we need to have production ready, tested with all use cases by the end of this sprint. And that became a really efficient model to then go, that part of the document is now done. Let's move on to the next part. As a result, we delivered on scope, on time, and error-free. I'm happy to report we had re-energized team and an optimized cadence. So we had a new way of operating with across our two units. As a result, I think they're now one team in the organization. So they have actually come together as an efficient model that now actually have the same reporting line, which is a model that we wanted to move towards to anyway. And that's been rolled out across another initiatives across the group. So it was a great success story that was just by breaking things down and sort of creating that right environment and looking at things a little bit differently, we were able to innovate and kind of move faster and get that uplift and deliver the value that we needed to deliver for consumers sooner. Okay, people. So the right people, credible, trusted, ambidextrous, and with a bit of mongrel, make all the difference to help you get shit done. The problem is the wrong people are in the room. So we're missing doers. Only 1 in 6 teams always include true doers in initiatives. 0% of leaders said that innovation leads are always respected. So we don't have the respect of innovation leaders for various reasons, and you may not expect that it's going to be incredibly high, but we've got 0% of leaders saying this. And we've got unsupported teams. So 2 out of 3 said that people rarely or never feel supported through uncertainty. And innovation thrives in uncertainty and complexity because we are problem solving. We're addressing problems. There is no right or wrong answer. We're addressing challenges. And if you don't feel supported through that uncertainty, it's going to make it really, really hard to get what you need to get done. No problem, Adam. Okay, so in response to that, you need to back your quiet enablers. We need to get the right people in the room. And here's some kind of quick tips that could be useful, and you might laugh at some of them because they might not feel practical in today's environment. But here's some things that have worked in the past. Is free up 10% time. So formula release, even if you start with just one person in your team, a capable member, the innovation time, 1 day a fortnight. Give them half a day a week, whatever it is. Don't expect it off the side of their desk. If you're constantly asking for more, and not giving people the right environment to be able to do so, you need to start thinking about creating that right environment for them and giving them the right to be able to think creatively, to think openly, to kind of work through complexity and problem solve in the right way. Curiosity recruitment. This is about recruiting the right people. So asking for curiosity in recruitment. So it may not necessarily be about the degree or the work experience. It might be more around mindset. Is you want people who are learners. You want people who are keen and motivated. So what have you just included a question around something that you've kind of put them on the spot? What have they learnt recently? What is something they've taught themselves recently that they didn't know about themselves? And finally, I think this is the most important, is actually pairing appropriately. So an example I'm going to share in a moment talks to this, but pairing insiders with outsiders. And when I say outsiders, I don't necessarily mean outside the organization. It might be outside your team. Is that bring people together, bring doers and strategists together, bring people from the core business together with your innovators and your creative thinkers, bring designers together with engineers. Bringing people who come from extreme parallels together is going to give you a far better outcome than just having people who are either doers or strategists, or at the end of any spectrum, whatever that spectrum may be, whether it's creativity, whether it's technical capability, whether it's internal product expertise, whatever it may be. Pairing people from extreme ends of whatever spectrums are relevant for you is incredibly useful. So I've got a useful framework for this as well, which is strategy versus execution balance map. This is a unique one that I've designed. Again, will be available at the end. It helps you sort of plot where your capabilities are in your team to understand where your gaps are, and how you might be able to fill those with getting the right people from across your organisation or outside your organisation. So an example of where we've done this was with a new product design for rideshare drivers. So again, working back at IAG, Australia, New Zealand's largest insurer, a number of years ago, we had the ambition to design a new product for rideshare drivers. So they were an underserved part of the market, but we were a tiny team of two. It was me and it was a graduate who had been assigned to our team for, I think, 3 months. With the wider team at capacity, but there was this kind of ambition to get a new product designed that was specific for the needs of rideshare drivers. We didn't know rideshare drivers from a bar of soap, so we kind of had to start with scratch on understanding who they were, what their needs were, what their motivations were, what their current insurance, how their current insurance is being covered, and what they like about it, what they don't, etc. Thanks, Oliver. Nice to see you. So the approach was, we said, we drew a line in the sand and said, okay, we're not going to be able to get this done on our own. The graduate and I, we don't. There's too much breadth here. The scope is we need to get something in market soon. We want to get something designed soon so that we can learn and kind of iterate this. So what we did was we asked for volunteers from across the business. We were quite selective. We approached their leaders and we ran a 5-day design sprint with cross-business stakeholders. So we got people from core product. We got people who are passionate about rideshare drivers. We got rideshare drivers from the business. We got all sorts of people who were interested or had the right capability or mindset to be able to help design. So within 5 days, we then engaged consumers, experts, and sponsors directly. We also got the funding sponsors for the initiative in the room and helping inform the decisions. We tested concepts with drivers. We prioritized by need and feedback. And at the end, we ended up with sort of 4 core features that we knew were going to be unique and help us. The combination of those things would design a really unique proposition that would meet the unique needs of rideshare drivers, and leveraging capabilities and strengths within the organisation was something that we'd be able to sort of take to market. There's no way we would have got there in that time with just the 2 of us. So the outcomes were that we did end up with a business case developed. We had a really specific funding ask. We had a clear runway and path to market. We had participants who felt valued and we uplifted the capability. So I guess the side benefit was that those who joined for the design sprint were introduced to a new way of thinking as well. We had people who were from really core and traditional teams throughout the organisation suddenly joining and learning about this kind of iterative and experimental way of working that was really, really foreign to them. But that helped uplift the capability of their teams because they went back and shared that enthusiasm and excitement and some of the things that we did to be able to kind of spread that culture through the organisation. And we had even members of those teams who wanted to keep working. They wanted to stay with us and keep doing what we were doing because they were really excited by the way that we were operating. Okay, architecture. Innovation needs scaffolding, it needs funding, governance, and clarity and rhythm to protect progress. And this is largely around just designing for the system that you're in. The problem is that innovation often has no license to operate within a complex organisation. One, we don't have dedicated resources, with only 3 in 10 organisations saying that innovation has a dedicated budget or mandate. So we talk about innovation, but we talk about it holistically, which is fine, but we also expect it to be side of desk, which is very, very difficult to do, as we all know. We have competing priorities. Half of leaders admit that new initiatives compete directly with BAU priorities. So it's very, very difficult to prioritise longer term, higher strategic initiatives when your BAU is sucking up your 60 or 40 hours every week. And we've got governance bottlenecks. So we've got 4 in 5 respondents, or 80% of respondents, saying that governance slows innovation more than it enables it. So governance is designed to actually, I guess it's largely about risk, but if 8 out of 10 leaders are feeling that the governance that surrounds their initiatives is slowing more than enabling, we've got some breaks, we've got some problems in the system that our governance is not necessarily fit for purpose to be able to enable us and get the decisions we need to get progress. So what we need to do is we need to flip that and create a license, the license for innovation, and some opportunities for that. And I've just pulled out 50K. This would be, needs to be fit for purpose for the organisation you're in. 50K might be 5K or $500 in your organisation, but create a fast track, set a threshold and create a fast track that simplifies procurement, funding and approvals for experiments below the threshold. And it can be a dollar threshold, but it could be a risk tolerance threshold. If you set some thresholds, you need this kind of architecture that helps you accelerate things and create a system that's fit for purpose for the initiatives that you're trying to push through. Because, like I said, not every partner is Microsoft. You need to be able to have the governance that enables initiatives that are much lower risk and much lower outlay than those big kind of strategic initiatives. Start cheap. Start with a cheap tool. Buy before buying tech. Is this something we can test in Excel? Miro, can we use an off-the-shelf app? Is there something we can do to just hack this? Can we use Figma? Can we use ChatGPT? Can we do something to just hack this together, test it before building anything? Let's build something really, really low-fi and really easy and simple, but safe, that's going to get us what we need, the learnings we need and the insights we need to be able to make the progress that we seek. Hold 15 minutes governance huddles. So replace long committees with short cadence check-ins that unblock progress, and do it frequently. So rather than having a monthly steering committee, have a weekly check-in where you might just focus on your risk matrix and you might just focus on the top right-hand quadrant of that risk matrix. What are our biggest risks? What's moved? What's changed? What are our mitigants? Do we have approval to do X or whatever it might be? Frequency gives us that momentum. And 15 minutes is not a burden of time that people, it's not a meeting that needs to keep getting moved down the track or getting delayed the day before when the executive comes in and goes, I've got this more important thing the next day. And suddenly you lose another month's progress because you haven't got the decision that you need. So a useful framework here is another one that we've developed called the Decision and Momentum Canvas, which is really around helping you understand and unlock that gap between decisions and momentum, and help you kind of get things moving faster. Okay, an example where we've created this this architecture to help an organisation move faster and get to the place where they want to be. So we had a small team that was at capacity, and their growth had stalled. Right, so really, really small organisation, and some real growth challenges around trying to attract new members and retain existing members. They're a small health fund. So our approach was that we built a system with guardrails to run the BAU in parallel with the strategic work that we were doing. So we happened to do the work in parallel to them in a really low-fi way, in a really affordable way. As a result, we were able to revitalise their marketing plan for focus and efficiency. And we identified and prioritised some growth opportunities with the rollout plan without any impact to the core business or their BAU. The outcomes are that we're about to have our first initiative from that in market within months. So this work kicked off in May, and we're about to have our first initiative in market, which will be the first time they've ever done this without it being on a large strategic plan. The BAU is unaffected, so I have regular meetings with the leadership. But they're those short meetings, and we've got they're really deliberate around what they're designed for. The decision making, we focus on the things that are important, and they're designed to enable rather than stall. And we've had really positive feedback from the board and leadership as a result. So this is momentum building, and we're able to keep going with the BAU, but also get some of those growth initiatives happening in parallel, which has been really effective. So strategy. Innovation must cascade from the boardroom ambition to frontline action and form a clear two-way steel thread between strategy and execution. The problem is that strategy and innovation aren't talking at the moment. 0% of leaders said that teams always link work to strategy. So we don't always think about what we're doing and how it links to what the business or the division is trying to achieve. It's a one-way street. strategy insights aren't necessarily always fed back. Innovation insights aren't fed back to help shape strategy. And 0% said that strategy is a live conversation, and only half said that it is rarely. So we have this kind of strategic cycles that exist. And Nick, I know you've worked in strategy in the past. I'm sure you could attest to this. I used to always think that strategy teams worked for a period of time and then they did nothing for the rest of the year. I know that's not how it works, but that is how strategic cycles tend to work in a lot of complex organizations. And I'm not saying we should be always shifting our strategy, but we always need to be critiquing our strategy and making sure it's fit for purpose for the environment that we are in and the ambitions of the organization. And it needs to be listening to the insights that we're getting from the initiatives that we're either building or we have in market or we're scaling. And we need to make that link explicit. So some opportunities is a strategy map integration. So adding innovation to the strategy map, ensuring that at least one innovation objective appears on your next board or executive slide. And Adam, I'll pick you out here. You when we worked together a number of years ago, you were very deliberate in developing a customer plan. You're in charge of customer experience for the organization at the time. And that customer plan was built from the ground up, but it had a really clear link to our strategic ambitions. So having something like that is really, really important, and it helps hold people accountable and get innovation on some of those executive documents so that it frames the importance of them and holds people to account. Second is a North Star test. So ask, how does this link with our North Star? How does this link with our purpose? Always ask that question and always be assessing whatever we're doing or whatever we're pursuing, how it links to what we're trying to achieve for our consumers and how it delivers value for them. And third is a portfolio wall. So run a portfolio wall, physically, digitally, can be on Miro, Trello, can be on a whiteboard, whatever it is. It doesn't need to be all that sophisticated. It needs to be consistent, and it needs to have all of your initiatives, and you need to be really deliberate on how you're using it around stopping, scaling, pivoting, starting. Having everything centralized and a common view of that not only helps your team focus on the right things, but also inform your stakeholders around you on what your team is operating on, what you're working on, and what progress you're making, what decisions you're making that might have an impact on them as well. A useful framework here is the strategy link canvas that I'll also share with you at the end. So an example where we've done this was expanding value for an SME segment. So again, working for a very large insurer, we're looking for a new way to create value for a key segment of theirs, which was small businesses. So we were tasked with this notion of identifying and prioritizing new venture opportunities that would create value for that growth segment, that part of the organization. So beyond insurance, we were looking at initiatives that could create value. So it could be in finance, it could be in energy, it could be in all sorts of different verticals that we looked at. So the approach is that we formed a cross-functional discovery team with really strict governance. And we had a very deliberate link with people from the strategy team, people from the core parts of the business, from the SME part of the business, involved in the decision-making. Like I said, we established that advisory board that had people who should be involved in the decision-making for that. We built a segment strategy to align on key markets and objectives because we found looking at small businesses is very, very broad. So we then had to go deeper with the SMEs within the space and go, okay, which SMEs are the most opportune for us to create value for? So we worked with the strategy team to go, where are the growth pockets? Where are the parts of SME market that are kind of moving faster than others? Where are the stalled segments, etc.? And we conducted research with a number of board check-ins and continually fed those insights back. The outcome of that was we ended up with a prioritized data-driven backlog of opportunities. We went from 150 opportunities down to 14, prioritized and validated initiatives that were then ready to move into discovery and sort of validate and take on that next level and get things cracking. And we had clear link for all of them between each of the opportunities and the strategic link to the corporate strategy. And finally, scaffolding. So like I said, if architecture is around that kind of design, scaffolding is a bit more related to the execution because you can't get onto the third story of a building to do the work without building the scaffolding underneath it that's already been designed through the architecture. So This requires discipline, clarity, and structure as the invisible supports or the invisible scaffolding to protect innovation from being crushed by business as usual, which is often the case. So without scaffolding, we really struggle for progress. 50% of leaders have never had a clear mandate or budget, or never have a clear mandate on what's expected of them. 0% of leaders said decision-making consistency enables progress in their organisation. So decision-making does not enable progress. It feels like it's designed to stall progress. And we have half of leaders saying that their teams are rarely or never have the autonomy to test and learn. So it's always about scale. It's always about the big things. It's what are we delivering that's big, and that gets in the way. So we need to protect innovation with scaffolding. So some ideas for that are an idea to scale pathway. So publish your idea to scale pathway. Actually document what the process is to get something from an idea into market in the current state. You'll find it's incredibly complex, it's incredibly confusing, and it's incredibly inefficient. But a one-page flowchart that does show how it's done can highlight where those pain points are, where those opportunities to create something that's more fit for purpose for the initiatives that you might be pursuing. Create a stop ritual. So when a project is killed, share why. Kill projects, share why, and what was learned from it. And this prevents zombie projects that suck up a lot of time, a lot of resource, and a lot of money. We're not very good as many organizations on stopping things. We're great at starting things, not great at stopping them. And put a ring-fence budget, even if it's 1%, even if it's 0.5% of your budget, put some money aside for innovation. And it's for experimentation. It's not for multi-$100,000 projects or bringing in major consultancies. It's just for experimentation, for trying things, for it might be just getting some tooling that enables you to be able to experiment or test things in market. We need to ring fence some money for innovation. Otherwise, we're going to struggle because we're always fighting against BAU money, which is very rarely available. So a useful framework to then apply here is the risk matrix, is really looking at what is the likelihood and the impact of anything that you're pursuing. What's the likelihood of it, kind of blowing the business up, and what's the impact if it does, or does it blow up the business? So risk matrix is inherently inherently linked to innovation, and a tool that I use day in, day out in innovation design and execution. Last example is a new safety proposition that we designed and executed for NRMA Insurance. So the challenge was that we're an ideas factory. So I think we had 8 innovation teams across the organisation. We had over 400 ideas across all of those teams, but we needed to deliver and get something into market fast to align with an ad campaign. So the role was around actually marketing innovation, and we had an ad campaign booked for the 19th of September. I still remember the date, 19th of September. We just didn't have a product to promote. So I had to design and create something that was going to be useful to, I guess, increase something that's nice to talk about, has utility for consumers in the market, but also increases their likelihood of choosing an RMA insurance next time they're considering their car insurance. So the approach was we ran a design sprint, again, invited people from across the business, which was very useful. We got the 400 initiatives down to 1 through a series of prioritization techniques that we applied across that sprint. We isolated the innovation lab team. So we sort of found the right model to design and execute the initiative once we had an idea of what it was. And it was essentially just 2 of us, me and an engineer. And we ran in fortnightly sprints. I did all the design. I did all of the research, all of the hustle, all of the product, all of the marketing, pretty much everything. And the engineer did all the building. And we had a really good cadence of test and learn cycles. So it was very much around, we ran a beta test with consumers, with a select group of consumers. We got their feedback fortnightly on the proposition and what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, what were their pain points. We prioritized those. We addressed those in the next sprint, retested, reiterated until we got to a point where we did get to market with a polished product that was sticky. We had a 70% retention rate on the app. And we also had, off the back of that, a business case to actually scale this thing. And the result of that was that we were able to sort of showcase how this thing could actually generate $20 million in value for the organisation year after year through decreased claims, through increased retention and increased acquisition. So we designed something far beyond the brief, and we were only able to do it through that kind of rapid iteration cycle that we built. And it was a good cadence to kind of help us achieve those objectives, and then build something and a good case to kind of scale that into the business. That proposition is now evolved into Australia's fastest growing insurance product, which is called Worldon, which exists inside the IAG portfolio. And proud to say that this was the first sort of in-market proposition that has led to that, that's now got sort of tens of thousands of members and is growing ever fast. Okay, I'm going to quickly talk about the AI overlay because I'm well aware of time. We're already at 1 hour and 15. But essentially, what we've heard from leaders is that everyone's talking about AI, but no one knows what to do next. What we know is that AI doesn't fix culture, systems, or strategy. What it does is it actually amplifies gaps, and without a capability uplift, projects stall. AI is not the answer to everything. I must say AI is incredible. I am constantly amazed by its ability and the potential that it has. And I use it a lot in my business, but in corporates, it certainly amplifies gaps. And without a genuine capability uplift, it's not necessarily going to give you all the bells and whistles that you might hear about on the news. So some advice for this is to start small and human first. Run a 30-day AI experiment. So if you've got a clear business problem, focus on the problem and think about how AI might be able to help solve for that. But frame success as learning, not as ROI. So this is a 30-day experiment. What are we going to learn? Let's test AI application to solve a particular problem. It's not going to be a yes, no at the end. Did it work? Did it not work? But you will learn from it. If your objective is about learning, what did we learn from this? And how can we use that to take the next step or make the next decision? That's going to give you a far better outcome. Anchor it to strategy. Anchor your AI to strategy. So before you pilot anything AI related, write the one sentence that links it to that organizational strategy. Do that steel thread test to make sure it does link to what you were trying to achieve as an organization and how you're operating as an org. And focus on culture, not code. So AI, I guess we hear the great existential threat of AI is job losses. So rather than sort of playing into those fears, get people thinking about how it can complement what we're doing. How does it make things easier for them? How does it support what we're doing and give us more time to focus on things that matter, whatever it may be? So if we normalize this discussion around curiosity and not being afraid to talk about AI, we're probably all going to be better off in the long run. And rather than the computers taking over us, we'll be able to work with them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually leave you with a link after this to find out which way your innovation compass is pointing at your organization. I was going to have a pause and give you about 10 minutes to complete this. It is a 10-minute activity, but I'll share the link after and give you the opportunity to do this for your team or organization or whatever is best fit for you. And we'd love to have a discussion after that on what that means for you, what the results said, if they sort of ring true or feel right, and how we might be able to help you solve for that. So like I said, I'll share that at the end. Very, very quickly, I might just talk about some sort of future scenarios on a get shit done approach versus a do nothing approach. Based on sort of, like I said, 4 scenarios that are, I guess, a combination of anonymized on some of the projects that you're talking about when you registered for this particular workshop. So scenario 1 is growth and experience. So the business challenge is that I want to move faster on client acquisition, business development, and concierge style experiences, but progress is stalling. The innovation challenge is that ideas are strong, but without visible small wins or a clear link to strategy, belief is slipping before momentum builds. So we just can't get the momentum that we want, which is impacting our ability to deliver the value that we're expected to deliver to clients. So here's some actions that you might take, right? Get shit done actions is run a portfolio wall, map your current initiatives, stop, scale, or pivot decisions in one session. And then choose one quick win problem. What can we do in 30 days with minimal budget, and let's make it visible. The impact of that in 10 years' time, although it sounds ridiculous, could be this is the start of an uplift in your culture and moving your organization, pointing it in the right direction, pointing your compass in the right direction. So by 2035, your member experience has become your growth engine. You've got seamless, personalized services that set you apart from your competitors, and you're number one in your category for loyalty and acquisition, right? Just by making a few little changes that are getting you in the right direction now. Or you can do nothing. And the status quo in 2035, your projects never moved beyond pilots, members saw little change, growth stalled, and our brand faded into irrelevance, right? Not necessarily a desirable scenario because we haven't prioritized innovation. Scenario 2, efficiency and claims. So I want to modernize claims analytics, simplify workflows, and test automation, but everything feels bogged down in red tape. The innovation challenge is that the real blocker isn't tech, it's the lack of structure and momentum. Without scaffolding and visible wins, projects stall before they scale, so we just don't get things off the ground. Some actions that you could take now is borrow a rule of 3. Is look at those 3 approval steps and go, how do we streamline this? Show progress, not perfection. Let's demo a prototype. Let's draft or pilot it within 2 weeks. Even if it's super rough, let's get something. Let's get a prototype off the ground. Again, by 2035, claims turnaround times were cut in half, admin costs fell, and we became the industry benchmark for efficiency, all because we started to move in the right direction and prioritize getting shit done. Or we do nothing, we keep shutting stuff down, projects dragged on, costs balloon, fraud risk rose, and premiums climbed until members eventually left us. Not desirable. Number 3, partnerships and influence. So I want to influence government, cut through red tape, and move partnerships forward faster, but everything seems to drag on. The real challenge is that the blocker isn't intent, it's that influence isn't mapped deeply enough and the right doers or the right people aren't at the table. Without that, our partnerships stall. Our partners move on and go to others. Some things that we could do: free up someone's time. Start with one person who's entirely capable. Give them the time to prioritize an initiative or focus on innovation or strategic thinking, and don't expect it off the side of their desk. Take something away from them to give them this right to operate in this way. And pair insiders with outsiders. So bring other external thinking in from other teams, from outside the organization, from other industries, whatever it may be, and assign one BAU expert and one fresh voice to every innovation initiative. By 2035, we've shaped national reforms, closed ecosystem deals in months, not years, and we've led cross-sector pilots, right? So we've made a real progress. We are a genuine partner with government and other organisations to get things moving. Or we do nothing and talks drop, reforms happen without us, and we're sidelined while others set the rules around us. Those who do focus and prioritise on getting shit done do, and they come out ahead. Data, risk, and insights. The final scenario here is that I want to generate better insights, reduce risk, and revisit old projects with fresh evidence, but it rarely shifts leadership decisions. We've done that before, it didn't work, etc., etc. The blocker isn't the data, it's that insights aren't connected to strategy or given a clear mandate. Without that, evidence stays invisible. We're not sharing our evidence, our insights. Get shit done could be add innovation to the strategy map. Let's make sure we get things on the board that are innovative, that are included in the strategic plan for the organisation, division, or team, and that at least gets people accountable for moving towards innovation and innovation capabilities. And ask, how does this link to our North Star? Test every new idea against your core strategy before investing and your purpose. So by 2035, data became a competitive asset, risk was transparent, decisions were smarter, and the board saw us ahead of the curve. So we weren't a laggard. Or we do nothing, insights stayed siloed, blind spots multiplied, and fines, reputational damage, and solvency risks mounted. We're in big trouble. So the question is, which future are you, your team, your organisation heading towards? What we know is that every delay compounds. So you can imagine playing this out, that in year 1, your project stalls, right? Something gets in the way, you're stuck in approval processes or competing priorities. By year 2 or 3, your momentum's lost. Your team loses confidence, stakeholders lose interest, innovation budgets get reallocated to something else, to BAU. By years 4 and 6, competitors advance, so you get disrupted by your direct competitors or new competitors enter the market with solutions that you could have developed. They were on your roadmap, they were there in people's heads, and customers' expectations have risen. By year 7 to 10, you're irrelevant, right? Your organization becomes a follower rather than a leader, struggling to catch up with market changes, with consumer expectations, with your competitors. Every delay compounds. So off the back of that, I do have an exclusive offer for those of you who have attended today, which is an Innovation Compass private workshop. So this is a completely new concept. We've got our first one coming up with a large health insurer in a few weeks' time. It's a 2-hour leadership workshop based on your team's Innovation Compass results. It immerses your team in get shit done versus status quo futures. So it gives you a view, a more detailed view based on the personal Compass results from your team on what your futures might look like if you take action or you don't. And it helps you identify your most critical innovation pillars within your team or your organization. Inside the workshop, there'll be some short reads, a scorecard activity to prepare your team and maximize the value of the workshop on the day. Within the session itself, we help you identify and play back your strengths and your gaps, plus some 20, 35 or 10-year scenarios that are tailored to your organization or your team. And post-workshop, we'll deliver to you some recommendations, some insights, and some tangible assets that you'll be able to walk away with that give you a view and hopefully a real vision and real clarity around where you should be investing to make sure that you are prepared to thrive and your organization is prepared to thrive into the future. So these workshops are available digitally or in person. Both are available. We have run both successfully in other ways. I've got some feedback here from other leaders who have run that. One of these is on the line, Adam. Thanks for your feedback on a similar workshop. We've had other workshops with other CEOs and other leaders across private health insurance in particular in the last few months that have all been very, very effective for those organizations and help them really center around where they should be investing and prioritizing. If you're interested in this offer, you can scan this code here to register your interest. I'll also drop the link in the chat right now where you can, sorry, just let me drop, I'll drop that. Actually, I'll send you an email after. That'll have the right link for you to be able to access that. Otherwise, you can scan it with your phone now on screen. So each workshop is valued at $7,500. There's only 3 available for free. So you will need to, it is first in, first served. So I'd recommend scanning that now. For everyone else who does register today and is on that top 3, we do offer a 50% discount for those who also register from the session today. Also got some innovation quick wins. So I've got 21 of the quick wins that we've talked about today as a framework or a document that you can download. So we'll send you a link after this session. Those are really designed to give you momentum where you can close some of those big gaps and hopefully take some things with you. We'll also have the recording of this. We'll have the slides from this. We also have all the frameworks that you can download. So everything will be available for you. And will be sent to you. It says within a week. Hopefully, we'll get that to you in the next 24 hours via email. So you'll have exclusive access for all of that. And lastly, if we can take the last minute, if you could please just scan this. We sort of have 3 questions. We'd love your feedback on this session. This helps ensure that future sessions are optimized for those who come along. And making sure that we're delivering value for those who we strive to serve. So if you could please just take 1 minute, the final minute to scan that, would very much appreciate your feedback today. I'll leave you with the fact that the future is unforgiving. Cracks don't close on their own. Small wins are in your control. And starting today is going to set you up better than anyone, any competitor or anyone around you. So don't delay, just get shit done. Thank you everyone for joining. Like I said, you'll get a follow-up email with all of the links and the details that you need. But if you could just make sure you do give that feedback, that would go a long way for me. Thank you everyone and enjoy the rest of your days.